Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Museum of the Moving Image online. My name is Sonia Epstein, and I am our Associate Curator of Science and Film. And I am thrilled that all of you could join us this afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are, for this conversation following the film Radioactive, which hopefully most, if not all of you, just saw. I had what is now a unique pleasure of seeing this film in a theater last fall when it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. And I can still remember the feeling in the room at the end of the film, the sort of swell of emotion. So hopefully all of you have gotten to experience that in your own way. And if you didn't have a chance to see the film, we are doing another screening tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you can RSVP for that on the museum's homepage, and then Amazon will be releasing the film to the public on July 24th. So tell your friends, and thank you so much to Amazon for facilitating the screening and conversation and letting us share it with you in this way. We are extremely lucky today that the person responsible for this film is able to join us. I deeply admire her work, so it's a real thrill for me personally. Marjan Satrapi is best known for her Academy Award-nominated film Persepolis, which she adapted for the screen from her autobiographical graphic novels of the same name. Her other films include The Voices, starring Ryan Reynolds, and Chicken with Plums, starring Mathieu Amalric and Isabella Rossellini. She's written numerous books, and her illustrations appear regularly in newspapers and magazines worldwide. Rosamund Pike is having a few technical issues, so she may or may not be joining us. There's a chance that she'll come in during the conversation, but I will introduce her on the hopeful chance that she will. She is an Academy Award and BAFTA-nominated actress who has earned international acclaim for her stage and screen roles. You may know her best from her role in David Fincher's Gone Girl, opposite Ben Affleck. Her previous film roles include, but are in no way limited to, An Education, Hostiles, A Private War, Wrath of the Titans, and Die Another Day. She is in the Sundance television series State of the Union, and you can keep an eye out for her in the upcoming film I Care a Lot. So please join me right now in a virtual round of applause for Marjan Satrapi.
Hello.
All right. Great. So welcome. To start, I'm hoping that maybe you could tell us just, very basically what drew you to this project.
What brought me to this project is, first of all, for any project, any film project, you start with a very good script, because without a very good script, it's impossible to make a very good movie, or a good movie even. So beside the fact that I was fascinated by the character of Marie Curie since I was a child, because I have been brought up by this idea that I had to become an independent woman, and one of the most vivid role model who was presented to me was Marie Curie. But this is not enough. Wanting to talk about someone is something, but then you have to have good material. So I read this script written by Jack Thorne, and what was extremely attractive to me was that it has already been, many films that has been made about Marie Curie. The first one was in 1943, and television series and good documentaries and whatever. But that was a story of love and passion. At the same time, I was going to talk about a scientist, but actually talk about her science. And at the same time, after talking about the science, also talk about the aftermath of the science. And that made it like a very complete project for me. So it was very challenging. And obviously when it's very challenging, this becomes very scary and very exciting. So this is how I absolutely needed to do it. So I became obsessed by it.
Had you read the book that it was based on before? I have it here for those of you.
Yeah, but surprisingly, even though I started with comics, in my life, so now we call it graphic novel. But and this is a graphic novel, but at the beginning I did not know that was a book. I mean, at first I was in love with a very beautiful script, and then they told me there is a book, and then they sent me the book, and surprisingly it was a very incredible graphic novel written and drawn by Lauren Rednice. And what Lauren managed to do, because she's a real intellectual, you know, she's very artist and intellectual at the same time. So it was in a way like wowing together the story of radioactivity together with the story of Pierre and Marie Curie. And that was quite unreal. And Jack Thorne managed actually to keep this aspect of her book.
Yeah, one of the things that was sort of interesting to me, you mentioned all the other, you know, representations or depictions of Marie Curie that's been, you know, in popular starting in 1943, but that film actually ended close to where yours begins with Pierre's death. And, you know, her life was, you know, you look at the film, for those of you, you know, who just saw it, her life was so inherently dramatic that it's pretty interesting that actually that part of her life was not very well known, so far as I understand it, until more recently. So along with that, I'm just wondering, you know, if you encountered any particular challenges in the production of the film, or why you think that you know, that part of her life has had in part kind of been written out of history until more recently.
Well, because, you know, without wanting to enter, you know, in any kind of, you know, feministic consideration, just mathematically, since half of the population of the world are women, I mean, just a question of math. Half of the stories should be about women, but this is not the case to start with. And then every time we talk about, you know, a woman in any kind of story, she's related to someone. Normally they start, you know, being the child of someone, and then they become, you know, the girlfriend of someone, and then the fiancée, and then the wife, then the cheated wife, then the widow, then the old woman, and then you finish making cookies for your grandchildren. This is basically it. So you are always related to someone. Having a real woman actually, you know, like she's like somebody total, is very seldom. So, you know, the story normally stops because she's related to Pierre Curie. She becomes his muse. So, you know, then it's interesting. So Pierre Curie dies. And does she have any other purpose to live since she does not have any husband anymore? Well, obviously she has a big purpose to live because, you know, the other very big passion of her life, and probably the first one, is her science.
Yeah.
And she actually, he died when she was only 38 or 39. So, you know, I mean, she had a long life after. So, yes, I think basically it's due to that, probably.
Yeah. And in terms of her science, I noticed in the credits that there were two science advisors listed, Zaba Barta and Borbala Thaler. I'm curious, you know, in the writing of the script, how important was it for you to feel like you had an understanding of the science, and how did you go about doing so? That would be my first question.
No, it's a very interesting question because, you know, science is something factual. You know, it's not because I like it to be this way that suddenly it will become this way. You know, I mean, I don't know. NaCl is a formula of salt. Even if I die, you know, it will still be the formula of salt. You know, it's factual. Yeah. So it's not so much that you can do about it. So when this is this factual, then you have to be factual about this matter. So first of all, you know, you just don't go and make fun around that or make things that are a little bit too beautiful because you feel it should be this way. We don't have the right to do that. So the science has to be real. Obviously, and I have to make it a little bit more, you know, like, attractive, you know, to put a little bit of color here and there. But the science stuff, they're true. And for me, it was very important that, you know, like if a scientist sees, you know, something written, you know, on the chalkboard, that they will not say, what is this? You know, like something that's happened to me many times because I'm quite good at math, you know, and I look at the things and I'm like, that doesn't mean anything, but, you know, like, you know, like you know, this thing for the integrals and the logarithms are very beautiful. So they just put them like in a random way, one after the other, but it's just beautiful. It doesn't mean anything. So try to be as factual as possible. So it happened that also when I was at school, you know, I studied mathematics and physics for the graduation, and for a long time, and I asked myself the question like if I wanted to make scientific studies or if I wanted to make artistic studies, and then, you know, I chose to make, you know, to just take the path of the art. But Rosamund also, you know, she took like a science lesson, because, you know, when you're doing something as an actor, you need, even if you don't talk about it, your eyes, what people, you know, they feel about you. They know if, you know, I mean, if you're thinking about, oh my God, I'm hungry when it's lunchtime, or if you're really concentrated about what am I doing, people, they feel that. So for making the character real, this thing also has to happen in her brain. So she has to be aware of what she's talking about. So I studied a lot, and so did Rosamund, and we had like two science advisors that we would not make, you know, too much of focus and too much freestyling.
Yeah, and did you work with the family at all? I know that her great-granddaughter, I believe, is still alive. Oh, her granddaughter. Oh, yeah.
Yes. I met with her granddaughter, who is also a physicist. The moment I met her, she was 89 years old, so she's older now. And I learned a lot, you know, from her. You know, like one of the things that she said is that, you know, like everybody, you know, say that Marie Curie was such a feminist and all of that. And she never made any part of a feministic movement. She was a factual feminist, you know, she did, that is because of what she did. She proved to everyone that not only she was equal to men, but most of the time she was even better than them. But, you know, she was not a suffragette. And lots of things like that, you know, like she said, do you know that she wrote this letter to her daughter, that was her mother, to Irene, and she said this and that. So yeah, I had to know a little bit more, because, you know, when you prepare a film like that, you know, I read, you know, lots of biographies, but, you know, a biographer is still subject of his or her own biography. It's a question of interpretation. You know, nobody was there to know what did she say and how did she react, etc. So for me, it was very important, you know, to try to understand who she was. And for understanding really who she was, I had to read her own words. So I read, you know, whatever correspondences that I could, you know, have the hand on, you know, the diary, and the usage of the words, the way she used them, you know, gave me an orientation, you know, like a way to go. So yeah.
Yeah, her family is, I mean, just sort of incredible. For the film tells you a bit about, you know, her daughter was the next woman to win a Nobel Prize after her, which is both incredible and also a little sad that it had to be that long. But then her, I don't know if I'll go into all of it, but just the relationship between Paul Langevin's family and her family continued through the generations.
Absolutely, because Hélène, the granddaughter, she's married to the descendant of the Langevins, so, you know, I mean, but, you know, at the time, you have to know, I mean, the schools, they were not very good in France. So all the scientists actually, basically, they were the teachers of each other's children. So Marie Curie would teach chemistry to the kids of everyone. They were actually very close. So, I mean, when you were growing up in this scientific environment, when you're the friends of your family, they're like the best scientists in the world. So, and the discussion is only about that, you know, it opens your mind, and this is what you want to do. Yeah.
So why did you want Rosamund for this role?
Well, you know, Marie Curie is a very intelligent person. She's like super intelligent. She's not like a super, you know, she's like uber intelligent. So, and intelligence is something that you cannot fake, really. You know, you cannot pretend to be intelligent. With that, I mean, like, an intelligent person can always pretend he's stupid, but, you know, the stupid person cannot pretend he's intelligent. It doesn't work both ways. So it's a question of, you know, like, spark in the eyes, is a flare, is an energy. And the first time I saw Rosamund, you know, and not only I understood, I mean, right away that, like, she was like super bright. But then she was also very science oriented. You know, she liked science as I do like science, and then it was something so cold about her. And at the second that she smiled, it was like the whole room was filled up with sunshine. It quite incredible. Like she has this charm, you know, this attraction that you cannot, you never have enough of seeing her. So when I saw Rosamund, I became completely obsessed by her, and I could not
here now, Marjan, so I can hear what you're saying.
I can hear what you're saying. Hello, Rosamund.
I conjured you.
Forgot. I'm going to be totally honest. I completely forgot we were doing this. I'm just going to hold my hands up right now and just say I wasn't even late or trying to. I just completely forgot. So
I actually tried to cover for you by saying that you had technical difficulties. So.
I had very technical difficulties in my brain. I'm so sorry.
It's no problem. We're glad you could join.
I was in bed. I was reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I mean, I just couldn't have been anywhere further away from Marie Curie.
I'm so happy you're here. I was just praising you. I was saying how much I was just sending you, like lots of love. So yeah, I see you.
Oh dear, what a disaster. Anyway, it's lovely to see you. And hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you. Yeah, no problem. Well,
yeah, I'm actually, there's times where this is a totally honest mistake. I can't really, I have to let it go. So I'm sorry.
You're right on time, really. We were just talking about you, and I was asking Marjan why, why she wanted you for this role, and she was talking about how intelligent you are and how your smile lights up the room. So
with some basic common sense missing somewhere along the way.
Well, and also that, yes, well, we don't have to go into that, but also that you're,
but nice smile. That can be on my gravestone, I think. Technical difficulties, but nice smile.
Well, no, we're very glad you could be here. Do you want to finish what you were saying, Marjan, or?
No, I think I just said it. I mean, at the moment, it's quite incredibly. I'm talking about Rosamund and how great she is, and suddenly her face appeared just in front of my eyes. I'm telling you, this woman is magical. We talk about her, and suddenly she appears.
Okay, well, so Rosamund, I'll just start in, and then we'll go to audience questions in a little bit. But
how big is this audience who's just seen me? Kind of.
Let's see.
I'm still doing up my shirt. I was like, oh my God.
We've got a few hundred, but it's fine.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
So what, as you do that, but I'm sure this is not a new question for you. Why did you want to make this film, or what drew you, I asked Marjan the same thing. What drew you to this project?
Well, it was a very original script which didn't seem to me simply a biography of Marie Curie. It was a love story, but a sort of rock and roll love story, a sort of romance with a man and a romance with science, told in a very, very unconventional way, and a very difficult script, I would say. Really not an easy script to make, and it was really only hearing that Marjan was going to do it that it made sense, because I thought, well, okay, I see how this person could make this script. I can't see how almost anybody else could make it, but I can see how she would. And then I met Marjan for dinner, and we just clicked. We had the same vision for Marie Curie and all her sort of surprising oddity, I suppose. Or we had, I guess, there's not so much footage of the real Madame Curie, plenty of photographic evidence, but unlike other characters I've played where there's been a lot more video footage, that there isn't for Madame Curie, and so you're like a detective piecing together what she did, what she achieved, what her setbacks were and the kind of force of personality that would have made those things possible. And we both saw completely eye to eye on that. So yeah, it felt right, I suppose, and an adventure. You know, you've got to want to go on an adventure with somebody when you make a film, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be true. How long were you guys working on this together, just out of curiosity?
Well, we had to delay this. Originally we had to wait, didn't we? Because I was doing a private war right before. So from the time that Marjan and I met, it might have been almost a year until we started turning over on the film. And during that year, Marjan is a bit like a gardener who plants seeds, and you're not really fully aware that she's doing it. But suddenly I realized that she just put these ingredients into my brain across the year, and sort of suddenly in this sort of fertile realm of the mind, sort of this character had appeared. And I realized that was all those seeds that Marjan had planted during, you know, conversations in London, trips to Paris, you know, walk around the Radium Institute, you know, never effortful, but all the right things were just being sown. It was really interesting.
Sounds sort of magical.
Yeah.
How was it to approach a character who, you know, was undeniably so brilliant and whose you know, understanding of the world was so formed by a very, you know, granular understanding of the way that it functions? I mean, Marjan was mentioning that you took some science courses, and I know that there were some science advisors on the film. What was your sort of relationship to portraying a scientist in particular, I guess, is my question.
I think one thing about anyone very clever is that they probably don't necessarily think they're very clever. I mean, you're probably never clever enough, even if you are brilliant, you know. And you certainly don't think of yourself as a genius. So you're never playing a genius, are you? Because I think no genius would call themselves a genius. But you know, she did lead with her brain. I mean, it was actually really refreshing, you know, because most of the time I've had extensive prep for a movie. It's always been about my physique, you know, and it was really nice to be asked to kind of make my mind more supple rather than my body for a change, you know. There's so much, especially as a woman, you know, there's always sort of getting in shape for a movie, and this was like having to get into mental shape. So yes, I had science lessons, and it was incredibly rewarding, you know. It was exciting because you have to know what she's thinking, you know, you have to do right by this woman, and I felt that, you know, cued by a lot of those still photographs, she's very rarely posing for a photograph. She always is either looking very impatiently at the camera as though she's saying, "Can you get on with this, please?" or she's actually walking. And it sort of gave me a sort of clue to the sort of rapidity of her mind and the way her mind worked. And so I thought, I've got to have enough stuff in my mind, in my brain, to kind of keep her thinking and keep that thought alive all the time.
Yeah, the way that you deliver some of the lines, like I'm thinking of the one where you're being sort of interviewed for Pierre's job, where it's just, you're basically, you know, preempting all of their questions and just saying what you have to say, and then leaving, which is great to watch.
How to do a job interview, a la Marie Curie.
Yeah. So before we go to questions, I have, I guess maybe one more for both of you, which is just that part of this story, part of Marie Curie's story, but then also what you see in the film, seems to be a lot about a person who's kind of out of place in her time, both in terms of, you know, her ideas about science, which, as she says, are going against prevailing attitudes, and then also her gender. And I think that these are themes that I think could be extrapolated from both of your work beyond this film. So I'm curious, well, first, if you would agree with that, and second, you know, what about her story or this film feels urgent to you right now, if that had to do with, you know, why you wanted to make it or how you feel having it being released into the world at this unique time.
Marjan?
Okay. Well, yes. I mean, if we want to talk about the gender, obviously it was very difficult for her, but she did not make it, she didn't think it was difficult for her. What, I put in the film when Marie Curie is in the bus with Irene, and, she's driving, and she said that she suffered much more from lack of funds than from being a woman. This is something that her granddaughter told me to actually put in the film, because she wrote it in a letter to her daughter, Irene. And, the situation of the women is so that, we are not all the time advancing. We make 3 steps forward and then we go backwards. So for Marie Curie, between 1900 and 1910, it was like kind of a window of freedom for everyone, where, it was more free. And then Irene comes just after the war, and it becomes again more difficult for women. So, but I think it was very difficult because the world of science was absolutely dominated by men. Of course, she was a woman, she was a foreigner, she was Polish. That was all these years before the First World War, where anti-Semitism was huge in Europe, and all this populistic movement and the nationalistic movement, they were very powerful. So yes, all of that made it difficult for her. But I think she didn't really care about that. She was too concentrated on her work, to give her attention to that. But I'm sure deep down she must have suffered a lot. I mean, if people there standing outside of your window and yelling for you to leave, this is quite unreal. But the sad part of that is that when we wanted with a sound designer to find out what would people yell, outside of her window, he was taking the train to come in London. And actually, he looked at the poster of the slogans of Nigel Farage. And we actually took the slogan of Nigel Farage campaign, and we just put it in the beginning of the 20th century, like Britain for British, and all the problems are foreigner, etc. So just to say that the story just repeats itself, sadly.
Rosamund.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, you do feel the sort of loneliness of her at certain times. What the cost of her brilliance was. But I think her strength was that she was never swayed by praise. And then you're in a stronger position to withstand, abuse in a way, because of the same media has worshipped you, and you have kept a sort of wise distance from that worship. You stay pretty steadfast, and I believe that she never really has cared what people think about her. I mean, she, to as much as anyone can, I think Marie Curie succeeded in that. Of course, no one's resilient enough not to let it puncture them somewhere. And I'm sure she worried, whether she was harming her children. I'm sure that, if you have people shouting abuse at the windows, we have her come and check, and the children are thankfully asleep. But, are they pretending to be asleep, or are they asleep?
Yeah.
That's always the worry, isn't it? But I think, I think she sort of lived equality and owned it as her right, because she knew fundamentally that, she was equal to her colleagues. I don't think she sort of paid too much attention whether those colleagues were male or female. She stood very comfortably. I think if you are completely confident in your worth and the how good you are at your job, then you can stand alongside anybody. I believe. And it's why she was never sort of fighting. I think she was always fighting as a scientist rather than as a woman, I feel.
That comes across in the film. The other thing that I had forgotten that I just wanted to mention is that she makes a very, in the script, and Rosamund, you as portraying her in the film, draws this very sort of clear line, which obviously is not so clear, between her personal life and her scientific life. And she feels that, people are conflating them. At the same time, you can see, through the film how intertwined they are. And so Marjan, you're a filmmaker and a writer who's made an autobiographical work, and Rosamund, as an actress, where I imagine that people are often conflating you with your characters. Or maybe not, but I'm just curious how that sort of line, how her or Murray's, how the way that she wants to hold that line fast and make sure that people are not conflating those things, how that resonates with you, whether it does, whether, you know, yeah.
Well,
If that makes sense.
the funny thing is that, you know, when she had this affair with Langevin, and the title of this, it was lots of title in like extreme right magazines. And it was like, oh, this Polish woman came and destroyed, you know, the nice French marriage. You know, I mean, the whole French literature is based of who sleep with who, you know, inside the couple, outside the couple, with the neighbor here. And I mean, the French, they did not need some woman coming from Poland, you know, to teach them that. They knew it by themselves. Since ever they knew it. So, you know, that's it. But, you know, the conflict that is between the personal life. I mean, in my case, sometimes, you know, like people, because I made an animated film about myself, and, you know, animation is like drawing, and drawing is abstract. And at the same time, it becomes very real. So sometimes it's like people, they see me and this is like if they have seen Mickey Mouse or something. So it's quite, you know, it's quite bizarre. And yeah, but they always think that they know a lot, and of course they do know a lot because I make a public work. So, you know, I have shown something. So, but yeah, but then you have to be, I guess, smart enough not to get overwhelmed by that. Rosamund.
Me. I don't really think about it very much. I mean, whether somebody conflates me and my characters. I think they've all been so different lately. I don't think they do really. I don't think so. Because they're not. I mean, you maybe. I think it's much more likely that bits of the character rub off on you. To be honest, I think I have kind of cellular damage from or additions from all of these big complicated lives I've played. You know, I think they stay with you on some sort of cellular level. I think they affect changes in your body more than the other way around. You know, I do think that. I do think characters sort of live on. You know, how could they not? Because you're asking, you know, you're asking of your body to convey these huge experiences, and you're asking it to produce all the attendant chemicals that go with feeling those things, love and sorrow and rage, and you know, that must flood you with, that does flood you with all kinds of chemicals. And it would be crazy to think that wouldn't, you know, create its own pathways. I'm really starting to realize that a bit late, really. And probably most of the damage is done. But yeah, no, I don't think, you know, I think I've definitely benefited from them. I'm not sure that I'm really in them. That makes sense. I benefit from the characters, for sure.
It's reminding me of the seance scene in the film. Maybe we could weigh you, you know, before.
Oh yes, to see if the spirit's really coming in. Yeah.
I can assure you the spirit is really coming in. I know it for sure. I mean, yeah, I made the experience for quite big, you know, some days with Rosamund, and each day, you know, it was a Rosamund that came in, Rosamund that went into that trailer, and then somebody else came out. And every time I was saying to Rosamund, and you just swallowed my Marie Curie, it was like if she really literally swallowed her. It was unreal. But even during the pause, even when we were not shooting, Rosamund was not Rosamund. She was Marie Curie, to the extent that when we had the wrap party the last night of when we finished, and we were on this boat, and Rosamund came, and I was looking at her, and I was like, who is this? It took me like, not, I cannot say a few seconds, it took me a few minutes to realize that was Rosamund. A few minutes. It took me a while, and I know her. Yeah.
Well, that's a great actress.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, well, Thank you. I mean, it's certainly interesting. I think there's a lot more to delve into this kind of realm, really. You know, obviously not with every character you play, but the kind of big lives, they do change you, for sure.
So we have a few questions from well, we have a lot of questions, but we have time for a few. So I will just relay a few of them to both of you. Let's see. We have one that says, I think this is for you, Marjan. How is your filmmaking affected by the fact that A, it was based upon a graphic novel rather than a text or a script in a more traditional sense, and B, that you yourself are a graphic novelist? How did those things impact your filmmaking?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I did not know that it was a graphic novel. So I fell in love with a great script, and then I knew it was a great graphic novel. And I took what was, how Lauren Redis made this story. I mean, weaving the two stories of Radioactivity together with the story of Marie and Pierre together. And, Radioactive, A Tale of Love and Fallout, it's called, and it's really exactly that. But then, the work that Lauren did is extremely beautiful, extremage artistic, but you can not use it to make a film because, if the film has its own visual language that you cannot just take, from a book. Even when I made it on myself, I had to forget about my own story. I had to forget about, the comic book that I wrote in for 4 years and just concentrate on, okay, now I'm going to make a cinema film. And so this is it, but that was animation. And the thing that it helps me, because I know how to draw, is that if I want to explain something to someone, I can actually make a drawing and not talk for a long time, because then I can say, I want this. And, I can prepare stuff like animatics to show it to everyone so they know more or less what I want. But it's two different media. I mean, comics, graphic novels, they're not storyboards for cinema. Is another way, absolutely, is another media. It has nothing to do, really.
Another popular question is, were there any strategic or artistic amendments, changes that you, Marjan, decided to make, or that that Jack made on the script, as compared to the historic record, and why?
Well, you make a film, so you need to create some drama. So, in the film, we see them having the big argument and she slaps him. Does that really happen? I really don't think so. This is not really in their nature, but it's a film. I need some drama. So, you have to make it. But this is not the most important. The most important is not the drama. The importance is the spirit of Marie Curie. And what we decided from the beginning, Rosamund and myself, we decided to do is that she was an uncompromising woman. She was a fierce woman. So we are not going to portray her like this smooth, nice lady, who is all the time, she's the muse of blah, blah. And that has been a reproach to us. I mean, they have told us, but, she's not very likable and she's not really this and she's difficult. So what about, a genius man, if he's difficult, is almost, great, oh, he's a genius. Obviously, he's difficult. He has something else to do than being nice. But as it comes to women, then we always have to be smooth and nice, etc., etc. But believe me, if you're the only person in the whole world who has 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields, chemistry and physics, is not by making fish pie and, carrot cake that you achieve that and being nice to all your neighbors. We don't have the time even to think if your neighbors, they like you or not, because you have something more interesting to do. So yes, she was tough and she was odd, and we embraced that. So that was the difficulty. And the thing was that Rosamund and we understood the same thing from the same woman reading the same stuff. So when 2 people like us, very different, we come to the same conclusion, that means that we have touched some kind of something that is palpable, that is true for us. So the real faithfulness is towards her spirit. Mm-hmm. That drama, you need to make drama, otherwise you don't have a film. or available the one you have.
How did you, Rosamund, think about her character? Like, could you imagine having related to her at the time? I mean, did she seem?
Yeah, I mean, she would have definitely been somebody I would like to know. But then I've always been attracted to people who aren't very easy to know. Maybe I'm attracted to people who are maybe confrontational or argumentative, or it's just always been something that draws me, because I suppose I have an empathy or a sympathy with it. I can see what, often it's masking a vulnerability, as we know. But I wanted to play her as an unruly element. I wanted to play her as somebody that was hard to contain and unpredictable and irascible and determined. But I have to also give credit here to Sam Riley, because if I didn't have a Pierre who could contain that version of Marie Curie, I couldn't have played her like that. It relied on having a Pierre who was able and man enough to find that interpretation appealing and charming, not threatening. If there'd been a Pierre who was too vain or too self-regarding or needed more sort of worshipful, a more worshipful version of Marie, I would have had to have adjusted. But when Sam came to read, you could see he found all that oddity, the eccentricity, as sort of charming as Marjane and I did. So it worked, and it gave me tremendous freedom, because I knew that, he was able to stay sort of resolutely Pierre. And Pierre is a sort of very modern, man in the humanist tradition who was perfectly comfortable with having a woman as his equal, and sort of gave her space to be herself, but also focused her. Marie, as we meet her, is very suspicious of collaboration, whether it be romantic, interpersonal collaboration or professional, and he coaxes her into a place where she is forced to be comfortable. She comes from a place where, all forms of collaboration, she comes from a place where all forms of collaboration are to be regarded with suspicion, I think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have to give credit to Sam, because that I don't you agree, Marjane? I think it was that, it gave me freedom. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Sam is, the real Sam is like a Pierre Curie, he's smooth. Yes. He's smooth and he's gentle and he's loving, and as Rosamund say, he's enough of a man that doesn't need to prove it every second.
Yes. Yeah.
Had either of you worked with him before?
No, didn't you?
But I knew Sam from before, and I always thought that Sam was an incredible actor, always. And when it came to Rosamund and I talking about who we wanted to be Pierre, I mean, I had Sam in mind, but I didn't dare to say it. And Rosamund, she told me, "What about Sam Riley?" And I was like, "Yes, let's go for him." That's the way it went.
Yeah, so it was good. I'd never met him. We'd met, but we not only very briefly after.
We have one more question about how the two of you work together, and then we have time for maybe one more if anybody has an urgent one. But it's back to something that I believe, Rosamund, you said, which is that Marjane was sort of planting these seeds over the course of a year that helped to foster in your mind who Marie Curie was. And the question is, were those seeds less about Marie Curie and more about certain questions or issues, or were they more about, her as a person? If that makes sense.
They ranged, to be honest. One of the early meetings that we had, we sat down and watched a very, very good documentary about the Chernobyl disaster. And I think Marjane was, then planting the very necessary seed of the tremendous respect one needs to have for radioactivity, as a phenomenon. Just sort of obviously jumping into the future beyond Marie Curie's knowledge, but nonetheless conveying the might and fallout, I suppose, of that discovery. And then, it would range to one meeting in Paris. I remember we met for breakfast, and Marjane handed me an envelope or rather a file with a Japanese, beautiful Japanese drawing on the front. And in it was this printed out letter, which I started to read, and it was just this, it was the most beautiful outpouring of deep knowledge of somebody and grief. And it was about seeing someone's face in death and wanting to touch that face and kiss those eyes one last time. And it was, and then Marjane told me it was a grief journal, a journal that Marie Curie kept in the weeks after Pierre died, which didn't come to light until 2016 or early 2017. And the family, it was part among her family papers, and it was finally made public for the first time. And it's the most moving howl of pain at the loss of somebody. And at that moment, I mean, it sort of, it made me cry just reading Marjane's translation of the French, but it also made me certain that, you know, under this spiky exterior, you know, there's rivers of emotion, which I always suspected. But, you know, it didn't boon her anything to show that to anyone. What's the point? You don't need to show that to someone to make them, she didn't need to try and make herself sympathetic. You know, she loved someone so deeply that the loss of him was absolutely catastrophic. And I can now look at a photograph of Madame Curie and know whether it was taken before or after Pierre died, because it was etched, the lines were etched on her face differently after he died. And I think all of that made sense of so much of the film. You know, for ages, I couldn't get my head around the idea of why she had this affair with Langevin, you know, which some biographers have tried to make, you know, the great sort of affair of her life. And I just couldn't kind of square that in my mind. And I thought, you know, what is it about? Why did she do that? Why, you know, yes, okay, she, you know, she's a sexual woman and she wants to, but there was some other reason. And then suddenly I realized it was the fact that he was the one person who had understood Pierre as well as she had in that way of working so closely with him. And as soon as I felt that, I suddenly, everything fell into place. And so I strongly, you know, I even watched a documentary after we made the film where again they were trying to say, you know, that the great love of her life came later in the form of, and I'm like, no, that's all wrong. That's all wrong.
Absolutely, Rosamund is right. Even the granddaughter, she told me, you know, I mean, they tried to make out of my grandmother and Langevin Romeo and Juliet. It was just a tiny little affair. And actually, you know, when they stopped the affair, you know, a couple of months later, they started working together again because, you know, basically they were scientists. As for me, I mean, working with Rosamund, you know, when you have an actress as great as Rosamund is, my goal is not to tell her, okay, you make one step, now you look at the back, now you do this, now you do that. I mean, if I want to control someone this much, then I make an animation film, and I've already done that. I mean, I can direct an actor who is like a beginner or is not a great actor or whatever, then I will direct them. Rosamund, you know, she was Marie Curie. I was thinking Marie Curie. My relationship to her was, of course, emotional, but most intellectual. Rosamund was Marie Curie. So I personally, I tried, you know, to give Rosamund all the freedom that she needed, you know, to explore and to propose, because this is what is interesting. Otherwise, you know, if you just want to have, you know, some kind of, you know, like dolls that they do exactly what you want, you know, then why working with great actors at all? You know, my thing is actually to take advantage of other talents, and you take advantage of their talent. The people, they never blossom more than when they feel comfortable and they feel free. So.
Thank you for that. I mean, yes, you did allow us to feel free and set sort of such realistic feeling scenes, you know, and had sort of, everything did feel intensely real, I suppose. That's, you know, that doesn't sound too absurd. Saying that it is a film, obviously, but no, it did feel very, very real.
Okay, well, I know that it's a different time zone for both of you, so we are going to wrap up. but just thank you both for making the time to be here and to talk about the film and answer questions. I've seen it like 5 times now, and I always find something new. So
thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Dan, I wanted to say that I was doing an interview on the American junket. Maybe he's the same interviewer talked to you, but he just said, he was a real film buff, and he just said that opening shot of going from the sun to the dot in her glasses is the most brilliant opening he's seen for as long as he can remember. So I just thought, if he didn't say that to you, I wanted to make sure that I said it to you.
Thank you.
So, he was a journalist, very serious film journalist with one of these, because it's quite interesting to see all the journalists at home, someone who just had like, walls of films. I mean, just lived and breathed film, you could just see. So it was really,
that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. And I know that everyone here has really appreciated it. And just to those of you who are watching who haven't seen the film yet, we are doing another screening tomorrow at 8 p.m. And then it will be in wide release on July 24th. So next Friday.
Behind me was to send everyone off into the night.
There we go. Great. So yeah, again, thank you both so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And good luck with the rest of the release of it and everything.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Rosamund.
Bye-bye.